For those of you that are here, just joined, welcome. This is the Salto talk about how to back up and restore your Okta configuration. We're going to talk through also kind of the basics of Salto and our approach. I'm guessing some people probably aren't as familiar with Salto on this call. So we're going to go through that a little bit, and then we're going to have a couple of questions and polls. And we're going to really open this up after the demo to let everyone ask their questions and even dive into some additional pieces of Okta management, because I'm sure backup and restore is not the only need you're having as Okta admins. So with that, let's dive on in. I am Dan Putman. So I'm a customer engineer here at Salto. I am dealing with the pre-sales for customers, helping them trial and work through their specific problems in Okta and all of our other applications. I'm also on the post-sales side, so long-term, achieving the results they're looking for with Salto. And on the call as well, I have Sheer. She is here as the brains of the operation. She is actually the one that wrote our Okta adapter, along with other people. We'll give her all the credit. And so she's going to be answering a lot of our technical questions, the deeper questions you might have about Okta specifically and how Salto handles that. So without further ado, let's do a little background on Salto. Obviously, we're here for Okta, but that's not all that Salto does. It's just backup and restore of Okta. What we are is really a DevOps tool for business applications like Okta. So Okta, Salesforce, NetSuite, Zendesk, Jira are all some of the big ones we support today. If you're looking to be able to better understand your configurations, we give the exploration capabilities, the impact analysis capabilities to go look and see how these objects and configurations are related. We can compare different tenancies in Okta, different environments in general across these business applications. So, hey, why is my preview tenancy different than my production tenancy? And you can look at that and see, oh, this group rule is different, or I have these apps, but not those apps. And we make that very clear. And then you can compare, or not just compare, but also deploy those changes and track them between environments. Obviously, we're going to talk about the backup and restore piece here in just a moment, but also the ability to do automation via CI/CD. So if you want to be just like a development team, which is our goal when we're looking to do change management, that's 30 to 40 years of best practices that have been developed that we can bring into the IT and the biz app space. If you want to do that, we're going to let you add that into your process of doing approvals, PRs, automated deployments, validations on configurations. If you want to layer that in, is all capable using Salto and our tool set. So with that, let's dive a little deeper into backup and restore. Move this out of the way. And let's dive deeper into, let me get rid of this, exactly what restore looks like in Salto. So I have two Okta tenancies. I have a prod tenancy and a dev tenancy. I can do, like I said, I can do comparisons and deployments between those two things. I can do exploration, but if I just want to do backup and restore, Salto makes that extremely easy. From the minute you connect Salto, we're going to fetch the data from your tenancy, like I have in prod. And you can see here, I've got a list of all the fetches I've done. I could review these independently. I could do a lot of neat things, but each of those fetches is now a point in time. We've essentially created a snapshot of your tenant in time that we can roll back to. So I, earlier today, went and changed one of my group rules. So as a very, very clear example, if I've got a group rule set up, and let's say someone went in and just blew away my Okta expression, right? And put it to a very simple, accidentally changed it to a simple expression, and I need to get that back. If I don't have that documented somewhere, it would be an absolute nightmare to recreate sometimes. But what Salto's doing is, because I've got those snapshots in time, I can restore to a previous version. And as you can see, I've got a restore point earlier today from when I fetched. I believe this is going to be the one. So let's go ahead and compare what I saw at this point in time when I fetched earlier versus what I have today. And then we're going to see a set of changes here. I want to make it very clear. You don't have to take everything that's going to show up in comparison. Right here, I'm going to see 2 changes because I made a very small change very recently. But let's say my change was a week ago and I had tens or hundreds of changes that are showing up between the current state and the previous state. I can select just one piece of the change that I want to promote. I can say, just take this expression. If I had multiple changes in this group rule or a auth policy or anything like that, I could actually take individual pieces by checking and unchecking the attributes. So I have a lot of granularity to restore configurations without having to take everything related to a given point in time. Very handy when you're trying to do very targeted repair. So in this case, you'll see this is exactly what I expect. So the current state of the server is this red here. So this red is showing me what is currently on the tenant, and the green is what I'm going to restore it to. So someone came in, they blew away my nice Okta expression, and or just checking for the internal at Salto IO being contained within the login property. But I'd like to get back to my Okta expression. So I can select this. I can preview the deployment. And you notice I didn't have to take that group change that was also there. Just leave that behind. I don't want to change any of my groups or anything like that, any of my apps. And now Salto is going to double check. It's going to run some validations on the server to make sure that I'm not missing any additional dependencies. I don't have any data or any configuration elements that are invalid, anything like that, that would cause this deployment, this rollback to fail. I should say, shouldn't call it rollback, it's overloaded term, restore to fail. Salto is run the validations and says, yep, we're good to go. You're green. I can review exactly what's going to be changed. And just so you believe me, let me bring over my Okta tenant here. And we can see here, that's the current state of that rule. So let's go ahead and let Salto deploy this restoration. And once this is done, we'll actually be able to see the change on my tenant. And I'm back in business without having to go dig through documentation, manually recreate anything. We'll be good to go here. So there we go. Group rules back. I'm successful. Yep, that looks right again. Can double check it. I'll refresh to make sure I got the latest. And there's my Okta expression. Now, that's really cool. I'm hoping everyone sees that, and is as this gets more and more complicated, right? This is going to be really useful. But what's also useful is I want to point out one thing here. You'll notice this ID here is the alphanumeric UUID you typically see for a group. In Salto, you might have seen with your sharp eyes that we actually translate that into the group name. So not only is it clear in Salto in a human readable form exactly what's being restored, but we're going to do the translation between that and the actual ID once we do the restoration. So very, very handy for making sure we get it right and it's going to function after the restoration. So. Well, I'm going to pause there for a minute and see if we've got any questions about this restoration functionality. And as we're doing that, go ahead and put those questions into the Q&A section as you're doing that. And I'm going to have a look at our poll here. It looks like the poll is, oh, perfect. So it looks like the poll is about half of the group thinks we should be doing daily backups, one weekly, and then after every deployment. which is very, we completely agree with. Fortunately, Salto will let you do weekly, daily, or actually hourly backups. If you're in our enterprise tier, we can do hourly backups. And we automatically will create a backup after every deployment. You can actually revert those deployments as well. You have a nice revert button available on any deployment. So not only if I don't want to have to go through the restore functionality and look at the the full set of changes, I can just go find the deployment that I want to roll back, and I can actually revert all of the changes that occurred in that deployment. So multiple ways I can go about restoring my configurations. Okay. Anna on our team actually has a great question here. So how many tenants can you back up using Salto? So for Salto, you can back up as many tenants as you need to. We consider them each to be separate environments within Salto. So however many you have, we can back that up. There is no limitation. And actually another secondary question is, does it work for a hub and spoke implementation of Okta? This is actually a really interesting question. So Sheer, would you like to field that one, the hub and spoke? I'll get you involved here.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. You can have, as Dan showed earlier, you can have multiple forms of deployments. So restore is one of them. But you'll be able to compare your hub with as many tenants as you wish, and you'll be able to deploy changes from one tenant to the other as you wish.
Yeah, so just like Sheer said, everything you see in the restore capability is available on a comparison, not just between points in time, but between different tenants. So that hub and spoke implementation is, you could look at the hub, restore that, or push it out to any of the spokes. It'd be easy enough. And if you push one thing out to one of the spokes, you'd be able to then say that, okay, take that same deployment and push it into any of the other ones. So essentially taking the same change set and push it into those other areas. So it's very handy for doing that and gain the same change set pushed out. So I'll ask this of the people here on the call. What is your biggest pain point when doing change management in Okta? Is it just the auditability and the restore capabilities, or is there a process that you'd like to put in place that you just can't do today with the tooling that you have? Interesting. So Dan Thompson just asked. He said shared responsibility model with clients. Could you expand upon that a little bit, that pain point there, Dan? Oh, and actually, let me see. I should be able to unmute you. Let me try this here. I'm going to unmute you, Dan, if you want to expand upon that.
Hey, thank you. Sorry, I was typing and it was too much to explain that quickly. But
yeah.
With other CI/CD approaches, it's very challenging to manage the state file because if it is a shared responsibility model with clients or any other like stakeholder, really having people that are able to go in and modify stuff in the GUI when you're trying to manage a state file via like Terraform or some other infrastructure as code tool, it's very challenging to sort of manage that state and the environment itself as things are changing, day to day. You want to make sure that your version of the configuration is up to date. That is really one challenge that's led me to this tool, as you guys have automatic importing to update and manage your state file.
Yeah, essentially. So what I think you'd like to be able to see is, you're talking about having people working on a. Do you have multiple tenants right now? Do you have like a preview tenant or a dev tenant that people work on and test in?
Yeah, we have a development tenant, but we, I'm from an MSP, so we have multiple Okta instances that we're managing, each of clients. So, yeah, like having that ability to, let people go in and make changes in the GUI, but still have that supported in the backup is a big thing for us.
Yep, absolutely. And then if you want to get into more advanced use cases where deployments via like a PR and an approval, you know, you could do that and then get that additional, okay, here's the changes I like to be pushing. Even if other people are making changes, it's not going to affect my PR. You can get into that process as well, depending on how many cooks you've got in the kitchen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Other questions from the group here? Okay, let me see what I've got for some of the questions we've had from other calls here. The sensitive information question is always a hot button one. So when it comes to the information that Salto is storing, we're going to be storing only your configurations. So it's going to be, you know, applications, your policies, groups, group rules, things like that. We're not going to back up any of the users or any of the user attributes themselves. So all of that data is considered separate. It's actually a really interesting question for the group here. I'm curious, is Salto the source of truth for your users, or is that being imported from another application? We tend to find that a lot of groups, it's coming in from a different source of truth anyway. So Salto is not going to touch the users or the user data. We're only focused on the configurations, and that's what gets stored in Salto. So that is, I'll also mention, we are SOC 2 Type 2. We go through those types of security questionnaires and questions all the time. So if that's a concern before you try Salto, give us hit us up, and we can absolutely walk you through that in depth. Okay. Our group's backed up. They are, Joe. Thank you very much. So we do. I'll just kind of walk you through here. So we are grabbing on the left-hand side. We are grabbing all of these types. So we have access policies, applications. We're going to back up, brands and brand themes, and then groups, group rule. I have group membership here. It's not turned on by default, but you can look at the group membership. So who belongs to which groups, and then so on and so forth. So this is our current set of configurations that we'll pull and back up. Everything here on the left-hand side is going to be backed up. Terrific. Let me see here. So I'll ask one more question while we've got everyone here. Workflows. So today we do not handle. So I break it down to two things. The workflow functionality that Okta calls workflows, we do not handle today due to a lack of API. And then there's also the automations, which Sheer, I'm going to have you step in here on the automations piece. I believe this is something we don't support today, but we believe we could in the future if it was important, right? The automations.
We actually do fetch the automations. I think we don't have this set up in the account we're currently showing, but we do fetch this data and also support restoring this. As for the workflows, it's kind of tricky one because currently Okta doesn't expose any API, but we're keeping up to date with the new releases, and as soon as would be possible, we're definitely going to add it.
Yeah, and we do have a line of communication with the Okta as a company. So we have, I think everyone has been letting them know that we'd love an API for those workflows. So Bruce, I see you're asking how do you deal with the GUID changes. So the GUID change, I'm actually not sure on this. So this would be if I was restoring an application. I'm actually, let me see here. Bruce, I'm going to unmute you and let you speak as well. So I want to make sure we get this right. So what you're referring to is if I have a application that gets, removed or something, I want to restore it. How would we handle the GUID between the previous version and the the new restored version. Is that what I'm getting here?
Yeah, just about anything in Okta is GUID related.
Mhm.
So when you go through the console, you see, and you're going to see that number or whatever the 16, 18 digit, whatever it is in Okta, that changes every time you restore something from an API.
Mhm. So, so what Salto does at its base, and then I'm gonna have Sheer correct me if I get anything wrong here specifically for Okta, but how Salto operates is when we fetch all the configurations, we get the GUIDs for each of these elements, but we translate the way we identify each of the elements is via what we call a Salto ID. It's usually the type and the name of the element, but it can be different for different element types. But that allows us to map them between tenants. So if I have a group, DP group 1 in my dev environment, will map to DP group 1 in my prod environment, even though their GUIDs are different. So when I restore something, let's say I had DP group 1, or my app, DP's app in both environments, I delete it in one and then restore it. Salto will still know they're the same based on the naming conventions. And then we will properly map that new GUID in case we need to do any mapping to, say, auth policy, group rule, any of those other things. We're gonna switch the GUID out if it needs to be. So, Sheer, anything I got wrong there?
No, you're completely correct.
It's a high wire act. I only stay correct for so long. That's why we got Sheer here. Gabriel, I see, can you export flows to JSON in GitHub? We absolutely can. Well, one second, by flows, so flows and workflows, we don't support those today, unfortunately. But any of the types we can push whatever we do support into GitHub. So any of these types, either after a deployment, or I have manual options here, I can push those into a GitHub branch, keep track of it over time, open PRs, things like that. Yep, and Gabriel, I was referring to Salto's capability. So Salto isn't able to fetch those flows, manage them, and push them around today. So apologies for any miscommunication there. No, sure. Hey, Gabriel.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I was trying to answer the earlier question. I think somebody asked whether you could export workflows, and you said there's no API, which is true, but workflows does allow you to write a flow to export itself to either a JSON file or a GitHub, and therefore Salto could potentially pick them up from that JSON file or from the GitHub repo. Therefore, you could still back them up. That could be the quote unquote unofficial API. It's a bit of an extra step, but it definitely could be done if desired.
Yes. Yeah, you are right. It's yeah, we haven't built anything like that today, and it really, I'll let Sheer speak to it. I think it comes down to trying to avoid extra steps and customizations like that for the end user. But I'll let Sheer speak to our views.
Yeah, so basically you can export it using workflows to GitHub, but eventually we would want to be able to import them back to your account. And the issue with this is the authentication, because currently Salto supports authenticating with either an API token or a OAuth, and you won't be able to use either of those with a workflows flow.
Right, and actually, yeah, I'd have to see how the import works. I don't remember, but yeah, you're right. At least again, you could write a workflow to capture the workflows as JSON files, as GitHub, etc. Restoring would be a separate question. I'm not sure how that works, honestly.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Sure.
This is one of the reasons we like working in the Okta space. We've got some very technical folks to have these conversations with, which is always fun. All right, terrific. Well, I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. This recording will be coming out. If you want to review it, send it to any of your teammates or anyone else in your organization. And yeah, I'll let you know as well that Salto does have a free trial. So if you'd like to go play around with it, whatever, please log in, create an account, and try it for yourself. So, all right. Thank you so much for attending. Hopefully we'll see you again next time.